Why not keep it going? This one, Mystery Meat against Neblime. We got a 4-game set on Nightfall. Let's see what happens. Of course, this is on the latest pre-release as of the 16th of October. Although, who knows what will be changed after I watch this game. We've got Neblime, the Platinum Blue Terran. That was actually the same color as Green Eggs and Spam in that AI game that I just casted. Against the Sunglow Zerg. That's Nerf Toss, aka Mystery Meat. I do appreciate that Mystery Meat wants to nerf Toss so much, but really, let's be honest, it's Terran who's OP. Haven't you guys seen these Wyvern nonsenses? We'll see if Neblime ends up adopting that. But it looks like he's just getting ready for a Stockade first. This is a little less efficient than it could be. And this time around, obviously, we have the Zerg from Nerf Toss, which is very funny. So Mystery Meat will be, looks like Quaz first, though it could be a Hatch first. Really depends on what he wants to do here. I feel like he would have already pulled a worker if it was Quaz, so I'm going to go ahead and assume this is going to be an expansion first. Neblime is not super aggressive, so I wouldn't particularly expect him to be able to punish this. But it's exciting anyway to see some neat little actions here and there. Even though this is on pre-release and not on release, it's neat to see these players go for something like that. Now, actually, it looks like Mystery Meat is going to go for a Quaz first, despite having so much money. So that's a little bit puzzling. I'm interested in what his rationale was there. Maybe just wanted to delay it or was indecisive. But we do have an Ahmed first because his opponent is Zerg, and he knows, hey, I might just auto-win if my opponent is going for a 6-pool. Some Scoutus Interruptus, but nothing too significant. I've thought a little bit recently about UI features that we could add to witness and replay modes. If we could somehow have some sort of flash, the same sort of flash that occurs when your units are under attack, where they flash from red to green. I guess it would be flashing from like, maybe like black to whatever their player color is, because obviously green could be, red could be one of their colors, green, and off green could be one of their colors. So it would be a little bit more confusing that way. But maybe that would help for the general approach of that. Now, Neblime does react pretty quickly to the presence of this Droleth, but Ahmed is helpfully leading in front of the Maverick, so I'm not so sure. I mean, he could continue forward, but I think he might be a little bit paranoid about a follow-up. Instead, it's just going to be Quaz to protect the Hatcherosk, and we don't yet have a, well, really any sort of economic follow-up here from Neblime. He hasn't missed any workers, which I was actually told recently by Keen that Neblime really likes to build lots of workers. So he saw one of the games where Neblime had over 100 workers, and he's like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. So I think that's kind of funny. If they do end up facing off against each other, I mean, wouldn't that just be a dream? But I think Keen will have to get through Shambler first, and that's assuming he can get past 3-Crow a second time. Of course, is that really a third time? Yeah, you never know. There is a Vestry on the way, so it looks like Neblime is going to go for a 1-base timing push off of the Bio Force, which could actually do a pretty good amount of damage. We're not 100% sure what's going to happen here, but there is a third macro hatch being made. There's only the 3 combat units here, one of them being apparently a scouting Droleth. Oh, I think I'm always confused by this now, because the counter was changed to count incomplete units. So as a witness, it's actually really awkward because I'm thinking like, oh, he's only got this many units or whatever. But usually that kind of thing only matters to the fine details when you're in the middle of an early game here. Now, Neblime keeping his money low indicates he is not interested in expanding. So he's going to drop a star pad instead. Yeah, I feel like this is definitely looking to be a fairly... this is definitely like a timing push of some kind. He's got something figured out. He's going to move out with 2 clerics, a couple of... Oh, he's actually sending his Ahmeds out first. Okay, so this is kind of reminiscent in some ways of... well, if he was going to pull the trigger on that, it would have been kind of reminiscent of the Bio days where you have your Hurricanes, your Firebats, right? You send off your Firebats to the corner of the map in StarCraft 1. And yeah, it's just interesting there. So he's brought a Mason over here. I think he's just going to use that to expand, but it was cleverly placed so that if there was going to be an attempted run-by as his army left, that would have helped him out a little bit. I don't know if the Droleth spotted that. There is only 1 Circuit over here. He's going to put down another Kagrim, but it's not going to be made in time. I think we might end up just seeing this more greedy or economic-focused style of Mystery Meat. I think it's just going to end up popping here because, okay, the Mavericks are going to stim in. They can fall back a second, wait for the Hurricanes to get here to burn down the armor. But this circuit only just started. Yeah, I think this one's over, boys. We got Neblime getting a real quick dub on the board because I really can't see how Mystery Meat could botch this one. I mean, okay, the one thing I will say is that this this circuit was allowed to finish, so there's some improper targeting here from Neblime, and he's fallen into the trap of trying to kill the circuit when you can just remorph it anyway. You want to go after the units here. All right, so never mind. Neblime found a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I really feel like if his targeting selection had been better, if he had focused more intensely on getting his Hurricanes to burn down the structures while they were under attack and putting his clerics on the Hurricanes so that they would stay alive longer, with just better positioning, he would have been fine. A Zorkish Shroud on the way, but there's not really any great anti-air over here, so this Wraith could actually get some frags. He's just going to go ahead and leave it there. I would put it on hold position and task my attention elsewhere, but he seems fine to do some tickling. There's some Quasis on here to do the same thing, and actually Mystery Meat does the classic trick of trying to save it by dropping a structure and then canceling it, because your workers matter. Well, he's going to put it down anyway. That looked a little bit psychotic, but we won't comment on it. There's 2 more stockades being made. The Ministry is up. Worker count, relatively even, and we do have a drop on the way as well. Wraith continuing to scout, confirms no additional circuits have been made. That's a really big site. And when he sees the Zorkis, he should know, okay, my time to get efficacy out of my bio army is dwindling here. I mean, the more Lachezelisks or Gorgokors end up making out, the less of an amount of time that he's going to have. But at the same time, like, again, Mystery Meat just ends up building a lot of workers. Now, okay, you've got this worker lead, but you only have Quasis to defend against a push that includes a Cyprian, an Ahmed, 3 Mavericks, and a Cleric. The Trojan will, of course, fall back. And honestly, I mean, this force isn't lethal per se, but if he only has Quasis and there's Clerics here to keep the Mavericks alive, the Huracan is not going to be a good target here either. He should definitely be pulled back. He's going to be focused down. Okay, so, all right, well, he doesn't get too many worker kills, but actually, I mean, look at this. The lack of focus fire initially here for the Quasis does mean that these 2 Mavericks end up staying alive. Gorgokors are on the way. Obviously, losing out on efficiency from this base is actually something that matters, and there's another drop in the meanwhile to pull away the units. So the economy is looking kind of bad here for Mystery Meat, right? If he loses too many workers with this round, he's going to have to dedicate his next set of forces to rebuild. Unfortunately, Neblime wasn't really too focused on that, so yeah, he's wound up losing a lot of the potential power that he had. He's going to try to soften up the Gorgokor. It's not a bad shout if he plans to attack again anytime soon, but does he plan to attack again anytime soon? I'm not so sure. This one very wounded Maverick with just 1 HP. He's walking wounded. He's going to scout around, and I guess he'll make Neblime aware of a potential move out. And there is a potential move out with 3 Gorgs and the Quasis. So there you have it. 5 Hurricans and an Ant Seal to protect the Trojan as it unloads on the worker line is a great idea. But the biggest thing is if he goes for another drop on top of this, that is where you're going to be in awkward spots, because you just don't have that much military here. There's plenty of watchdogs to protect the main. There's 1 or 2 in the Nat, but versus the Quasis, he definitely needs to keep more units around, and he is loading up in a drop. I think this will just get caught, so he should just like pull back immediately, and unfortunately for him, he does not. So yeah, in CMBW, you can actually see when your opponent is, actually had some units in there. So this isn't really the end of the world. Neblime can just build more units and defend, but now he's the one who's losing out on mining time, on workers, etc. So his drop definitely needs to do some damage, and so far it's just forced to pull. Neblime calls GG, puzzlingly enough, even though he could have just built some Cyprians to defend against that. But all right, again, I don't know how Neblime lost that game. We'll go ahead and mark it down for Mystery Meat and get into map number 2. All right, we have the same positions here, and actually the same color for at least one of our players. That is going to be Neblime on the Platinum Blue on the bottom right, and the white Zerg here, that's Nerf Toss, a.k.a. Mystery Meat. Honestly, we should get a player who actually, like, his name in the community is actually Nerf Toss, or some race complaint, right? That should absolutely happen. I want to see, there's people who have their IDs named after units or even structures. People name them fucking Barracks is a player in Brood War. Yeah, obviously, I need to see, like, Huracan, or Huracan Hero, like Firebat Hero, I need to see shit like that eventually show up in CMBW. So it's going to be another stockade first, and it does indeed make some sense. This time he's a little bit more snappy with it. I don't really think that cost him the game. What cost him the game was target selection when he attacked the natural. He had such an advantage, but he hesitated when he stemmed forward. He could have just stemmed right past the circuit, as a matter of fact. I was thinking about how Neblime could have won that even harder if he just ignores the circuit entirely, loses his clerics to heal up his Mavericks after the initial round of attacks, and then he just kills the Drolets, shuts down the mining completely, and then eventually the Hurricanes catch up as well, because obviously they're slower than stimmed Mavericks. Then you can start to mount an actual attack coordinated onto the circuits. So at the very least, you threaten to kill the Hatcherosk, and that would deal way more damage than he wound up doing. Either way, though, can't be too critical of Neblime. He's not as experienced with the project as somebody like Mystery Meat. So him losing in that particular matchup after blundering twice. I mean, the second blunder was obviously losing the 7 Mavericks and the Cleric. That absolutely could have made a difference in the hold. If they can DPS down the Gorger cores, then the Masons can repair the anchor without being destroyed by the splash damage. You know, there's all sorts of different things that makes a difference there. So it's cool to have a game to recap as we're waiting for this one to go underway. We do have the Quazeth opener here, and there will be an attempted expansion. Not going to be thwarted by that Mason. Caught it too late to do something like that. And we have a little bit of gas coming, so I think there will probably be one pair of Naths or a quick transition out of Quazeth units, one or the other. I'm not sure about this move-out location. Like, if you burrow the Droleth there, yeah, I think Mystery Meat's realized, okay, I kind of want to do something else. And he should actually see this, yeah. He will have some vision of these units moving out, so he's going to be aware that the timing is a little bit faster this time around. And the units are just going to be rallied across the map. We finally have an example of what I was talking about. Guys, if you have an attack coming, if that's what you're trying to do, and you want to kill your opponent, definitely rally your units across the map. This is an important detail. I see this happening at the Class 2 level pretty much never. You need to have your units be rallied towards the front line. The only time you would not do that is if you are worried about a counterattack. And there are technically some Nats that are available, but Neblime can just throw down a Watchdog if he suspects that or if he catches that. The Quasis are going to stand guard, stand vigil. They will have some ability to do some pot shots here, but you can just walk right past him. Yeah, in fact, you don't even need to worry about taking damage from them in that one spot. So an anchor can be put down or even a Watchdog. He's got to watch out and react a little bit fast here, and unfortunately he flubs the micro quite significantly there, I would say. Again, the Mason could have been constructing a Watchdog this whole time, or an anchor. There's a lot of Hurricanes here, but the Nats are going to do a number on that. So it looks like instead we're just going to have the Hurricanes charge over here and try to disrupt the mining time. At the same time, what do we see back at home? Still no Watchdog constructed. We've got more units streaming in. This could be a nice showing of the power that you can get, but it was mostly Hurricanes, so obviously they're not going to be able to do too much. So I think he's realized now, okay, I should just like try to distract the army as quickly as possible. He's catching some more units. If he can regroup with these 2 Hurricanes, send this one in to do some more damage. There's some wounded Drolets still here, but not even going to be the ones that are targeted. And of course the Nats are here in force, 6 of them. That'll take care of that. Now there is a Watchdog, and it's exclusively Mavericks being constructed now, but the problem is, despite all of the little tickling and harassment, not really any worker kills. Mystery Meat is looking pretty solid at this stage. So I would not be surprised if we end up seeing yet another fast, decisive victory in the next few minutes. Looks like this Hurricane is still here, so he might try to enter in after the Nats leave, which would be a great idea. There's only the one Quasi that can defend right now. That's one good thing now that you were starting to learn how to read this a little bit better, is that since we know that there's 6 Nats and the one Quasi, and there's 7 up here, we know there's no military on the way for Mystery Meat, so that Hurricane could absolutely do some damage. Basically, I think he's going to wait until the Nats actually show themselves over here. Going up to 4 stockades off of 1 base, it is possible. He's not harvesting any gas right now. So it's just going to be Mass Maverick for the time being. And he's going to start to walk away. 6 Naths can take down a Watchdog even through repair. But obviously the Scout confirms it. So we do have a Circuit over here. The Hurricane can walk right past it. And should walk right past it. But he walked in the least efficient manner. A lot of lack of micro from Neblime in general this game. I don't know if he wasn't feeling too hot or what. I normally see him do better things than this. So, does need to respond here. He's doing a little bit better this time around. Obviously, one of those Nats ends up going down. But the reinforcements can absolutely be picked off. This should be a similar-ish sight to most people when they see stuff like, Marines getting dogged by mutas in the early stages of TVZ. This Maverick force is quite lethal and is going to force out more and more Circuits. Obviously, the Circuits having 3 armor is a huge boon versus the Mavericks. And his Orcish Shroud coming as well to confirm. Meanwhile, that worker scouts no base. That's a pretty big deal, but it is Terran. They could be building it in their main, right? So I think neblime is actually practicing a little bit of like one base all in. What kind of stuff can you do? He's added gas to the equation. He's behind by almost 10 workers. We are going to see a star pad be added shortly, I believe. Just waiting for one more return, and there it is. So yeah, this is definitely more of an all-in type play, and we do see a lot of quasis here. The economic advantage in Cosmonic Brood War is not dissimilar to the economic advantage you can get in default StarCraft. I think you're very unlikely to see a player in this game state. You're very unlikely to see neblime win, because he would just have to like, I don't even know what he would have to do in order to win, but I think it would be like a series of crushing defeats for Mystery Meat from a military standpoint, followed by like neblime containing his opponent to 2 bases and taking like 3 bases. So it just doesn't seem very likely to me. This military could theoretically crack this open. There are a lot of Terran military units going across the map. And maybe if we get an Anseal in the picture, which is on the way, he could do it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Mystery Meat is privy to that, and there is a Lekizalisk. There's actually 2. That's another thing that the Anseal will be good for, is detecting those. There's going to be an attempted Lekizalisk drop, which actually makes this defense a lot easier to crack, in theory. Like, 2 Lekizalisks is way harder for Terran Bio to beat than 1. The 1 you can kind of dance around, and there's only going to be 1 target, like 1 line you have to basically like carve out away in your mind. But if he attacks before the Anseal shows up, if he plays his hand and shows how many units he actually has, that could be pretty bad. So we're going to wait for the Anseal, it looks like. We have more units streaming across the map. There's nothing really at home to defend. This is a case where, like, okay, remember what I was saying earlier, rally your units across the map. It makes sense if you're kind of all in, and it makes sense if you don't predict that you're going to be attacked. But here comes the Lekizalisk. The pull is okay, it's not too bad, but the focus fire is on things like the circuit. Now he's found the Lekizalisk, but a lot of their Achmeds are already dead, and the Anseal is out of energy. There's more Lekizalisks burrowing. I think as soon as this attack fails, you have to GG, because you're so behind, right? When the attack is held, it's pretty much game over. I think the double Lekizalisk drop, as it is now, is just going to be icing on the cake. I mean, the Anseal's nowhere in sight. There's a Wraith coming as opposed to another Anseal. There's a Trojan here. I guess he maybe thinks that if I elevator my units up and attack the front, or rather the main, as opposed to the front, that might help me. But at this point, we already know. He's going to see that, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just outright GG's immediately. He is elevatoring, but GG is called, and neblime not doing too hot against the Zerg of Mystery Meat. All right, boys, let's get into it. We are back. This time around, the Zerg is on the bottom right. It's the bronze Zerg of Mystery Meat going up against the yellow Terran of neblime. Neblime has not had a good time so far in this set. We understand and what would you say? Not pity, but like we feel some kind of emotional attachment to neblime. We empathize with him. We understand going up against Mystery Meat, as pretty much any race, can be very daunting. But neblime is supposed to be a contender. He's supposed to be one of our top players. Well, he's got to prove it. And, I mean, again, this game is just like, oh, let me just play in general, as opposed to a tournament match. So it's not like it's all on the line. Maybe neblime is practicing stuff. I definitely think it's really interesting to see people attempt to do something similar to the default StarCraft Brood War TVZ strategies. And, you know, do they work? Do they not? You know, like if the Lekizalisks are up similarly to lurkers in StarCraft 1, it's really hard to break, right? But now it feels a little bit more organic where you can fight them. You do have the ability to detect without needing to rely on scanner or whatever. And then you don't need to rely on point and click irradiate, LOL, because that's game design. Now, anyway, enough about how Cosmonic Brood War is just better. We do indeed have the same sort of opener here. So we're going to see a delayed expansion out of Mystery Meat. And he has the 1 guy on gas now starting to add a second. We'll see if that turns into faster naths than before. I did not keep track on his gas saturation time last time around, so I'm not sure about that one. Now, curiously, neblime's made the stockade, but he waited until almost 200 minerals to actually queue a Maverick. So I wonder if maybe he's going to try something more economic this time around. If he does scout that his opponent is harvesting gas with a Quaseth, one of the things that he could make the executive decision about, yeah, he's going for a 1 Maverick expand. So we've seen stuff like this in the past. He's actually going to try and Well, I don't know why he stimmed and then didn't go any further, but I figure he's probably going to try to like kill the Droleth before it sees it. But workers have some beef in CMBW, so you know that's something to keep in mind. And no longer has the stim. Actually, Mystery Meat decides not to progress any further there, so that's kind of interesting. There's some scuffling over here where he's trying to block the building placement. He could just attack the Droleth. He wins the fight even with less HP. Although at some point, obviously, it starts to become not so favored. So now we finally have the expansion. That's not a huge delay, but it is something. So Neblime already showing that he's willing to be a little bit annoying. And crucially, he scouted out the Nath, so he's able to get a Watchdog under construction. He doesn't have one over here, so he's going to have to rely on Mavericks to defend. I think as long as it's equal Mavericks to Naths, depending on micro, you can still win that with either side. But obviously the advantage is going to be towards the... Oh, look at that. The advantage is going to be towards the Mavericks here. I hope that Neblime has realized sort of like where the rough area to scout out Mystery Meat's positioning with his Droleths. And speaking of Mystery Meat, his micro there was not stellar. Obviously did end up losing a Nath, so he's kind of lost a lot of pressure. For all he knows, his opponent didn't even build a Watchdog. That would have been 100 minerals that Neblime apparently didn't need. But there's more Naths on the way, so it will still pay for itself. We are looking a little light on mineral harvesters, only 11. We do have 3 on gas. That's fine. One of them is obviously idling over here while another builds an anchor. So we're going to be a little bit before the sort of approach here works out for Neblime. I do like the stockade first into an expansion attempt. I kind of thought maybe that's what he was going for, but obviously if you end up getting 6-pooled or something, that is a build order win at this point. I mean, technically the one Maverick... Okay, the fact that it's stockade and then expansion, if it was actually Ministry first, you would be a psychopath. But, you know, it could theoretically work. However, because it was stockade first, I think maybe you can still hold that. Even if you only have, like, the one Maverick. Because you'd probably only have the one Maverick anyway, right? So I feel like it would hit sooner than you really knew if it was a 6-pool or a 7-pool or something. By the way, shout out to Dead Infested for his first game that we've ever seen from him. Yes, it's a 4v4 against AI, but he goes 7-pool. I mean, come on. You gotta say hats off. There's only the one Watchdog. There is a star pad here. There's 7... or no, is it just 6 Nather cores on the way? No, this is 7, right? Yeah. So that's going to be pretty significant. The Fulcrum is going to be disrupted. Mavericks are going to go ahead and stim. The Watchdog was lifted up, so that was a little bit awkward. I think he was going to try to defend the Fulcrum with it. One Mason does go down. Well, 2 Masons in total go down. A second Watchdog being made. That's a fairly big commitment in terms of resources to the Naths. So definitely something that you want to keep in mind. Quasi scouting out for any drops. Obviously, Neblime is proven to be a drop-heavy player in some ways. And the anchor with the Cyprians is a little bit far to defend the mineral line, which is recognized by Mystery Meat. So there's going to be a little bit of a worker pull. Obviously, the Mavericks stem away. There shouldn't be much more allowed over here. I don't think there's going to be very much damage dealt. So at this point, Neblime and Mystery Meat have pretty much the same worker count. Obviously, it's going to start favoring Mystery Meat the longer the game goes on because he's going to have access to more Hatcherosks. And Wraiths are on the way for the star pad, so that will allow us some scouting on the other side. By the way, we've been thinking about what to do about Wraith cloaking. I feel like Terrans might end up getting combat cloaking, which I had 2 versions of in my head. The first version, which is the most obvious, is basically if you... proximity detection. So if you're within like 3 range or 2 range of a Terran cloaked unit, then you reveal them. And if you're within... if you're not within that, then you don't reveal them. But they have cloak while attack. Their attack does not break cloak. So I thought that would be kind of interesting compared to the attack breaking cloak of the Protoss. But obviously they can be as close to you as you want, as you like, which is useful for things like witnesses that don't move very fast, right? Now the other version of combat cloak that I had was that they actually are not cloaked unless they attack, and when they attack they cloak. Which is kind of the inverse of what we have right now. I laugh at it, but it is kind of an interesting idea. Maybe we'll play around with that for the Escozi or something instead, if they end up having a cloak. Obviously, Zerg have a cloak, or a hiding, which is burrow, which is also very thematic, because it's like, okay, they can't move, but they obviously have the ability to hide, and it's also pseudo proximity, right? You can step on them to reveal them. I don't know, this is interesting. I like that each race could have something like a different way to do it. Anyway, I like that part of it. So, and if it is going to be like the Escozi or something like that have the combat cloak as opposed to proximity cloak. You know, Terran would be proximity and then Escosia would be combat. I like combat cloaking for them because it's like, oh, these units, like, maybe it's short range units, so if you keep them at a range, they can't cloak, so they can't benefit from it. I like that part. That's pretty neat. So there's all sorts of interesting play there. But I also could see the Escosia units then being a little bit runaway. So we'll have to see. I'm acutely aware and sensitive to the idea that if I make the new race and it's like, oh, this is my OC, man, I made this custom race. And I mean, admittedly, it is original. Like, it's not some other games thing. It's not like the Zelnaga or some shit, or the Tagal or some shit that was like referenced in Starcraft lore. Instead, it's something completely new. I'm sensitive to the idea that people could be like, oh my god, this guy's made his own race busted. He's, you know, being an asshole and making his stuff OP. So I don't want to do that. That's not my intention, but it could happen. I mean, a lot of that is just going to be due to unfamiliarity. But we're very familiar with the Goliaths and how absolutely easily they dispatch with things like Nathracors. There is an attempted third base being taken on Nightfall. Please. Mystery Meat is about to get stepped on by Goliaths, I think. However, there is some tickling happening over here where they try to harass the Antseal. They were not going to be able to do too much there. I like the Quaslusk positioning. Even the Wraith position there to stop any drops from coming in that direction. I think it might have just been forgotten about right now, but it's still in a useful position in that sense. Rallying more units across the map. There's a couple of idle Goliaths that could absolutely make a pretty big difference here. That Hatchros did not get canceled. What is Mystery Meat's plan? Iziracors, Quasilusks, Gorgocors. He's got a full spread of tech, but that obviously means that he doesn't have as much opportunity to tech up to tier 2 just yet. Iziracors are going to try to engage with this, but the Antseal plus the Goliaths is going to make this a little bit difficult. Now, here come the Gorgocors. Nathracors are also going to be able to dive onto things. The kite back is going to occur, and the Goliaths should be focusing down on the air units because that's where their specialty is. The Vulture's here, but it didn't lay any lobotomy mines. Okay, it lays one, but they're not kiting backwards into it. And where is it? Okay, it ends up dudding. Yeah, I think the Gorgocors were going to be too much there, and he's barely able to save the Hatchrosk. Actually, this Goliath could just walk right up and do it, but instead it's going to announce its presence. So a sort of fighting retreat over here. Some Vultures are going to go across the map. I would really like the Vultures to skirt across the map and then snipe the Hatchrosk there. That could absolutely be the case. Absolutely something that could happen. Reveals the Quasilusk. He's going to go ahead and kill that. He doesn't really have that much at home. He's got a couple of watchdogs. One of them is protecting his fulcrums. I like the mech switch. Bio wasn't working out. I'm going to go mech instead. And obviously, this is a large number of Gorgocors, so that's pretty spooky. The Vultures went back to sync up with their mechanized regiment. An anchor has been deployed over here. I feel like this area also splits your focus a lot, but at least you can hold this choke, and then you can also hold, like, from the ramps. So you have a little bit more defensibility instead of just being super open low ground. At the same time, though, if your enemy is predominantly building Gorgocors, like, it feels like that's something that's happening to Mystery Meat, or with Mystery Meat. I mean, at the very least, this delayed his tier 2 a lot, right? We can tell that because he's got a lot of money. He's only going to be now dropping tier 2. It's in his natural. At the same time as the Terran is dropping their tier 2. So normally you would say that Terran is behind because Terran has cheaper tier 2. But at the same time, the Fulcrums are here, and those scale better. Generally speaking, it's like widely held that those end up scaling better than some of the other cases. So there needs to be a response to this from Mystery Meat. I'm not sure that he'll be able to intercept this attack force before the Hatchrosk is killed. Especially if they're force targeted onto it, which it doesn't look like they are right now. I think they're on attack move. The Gorgs are here. Is it going to be enough? There could be some micro over here from Neblime. He recognizes that. He's going to continuously try to attack it. Unfortunately, he is not successful. That's probably the difference of like adding one extra Vulture to that group to snipe that or whatever. But so now there's two very wounded Hatcherosks here. There's a macro one over here, so killing it wouldn't even really be the end of the world. Denying the third base, though, or the fourth base, rather, that would be really big. I feel like now we're starting to see a proper macro game on Nightfall, despite the fact that obviously holding a third is very difficult. I think as soon as an attack actually comes, like a coordinated attack, you would end up seeing one of these bases end up falling. But there's a lot of static defense there for Mystery Meat, so maybe the third there is actually safe. And the side base location is actually going to be where the real battle happens. I like the lobotomy mines placed here, but there's only 2 Goliaths in there. It's definitely like a very far distance away from the Ministry, so it's really going to be hard to hold with like any pull. I do like this Vulture scouting out, though. It reveals the position. What's the response from Neblime? He's not really paying too much attention to the minimap, and he definitely needs to start dealing with this threat. So he wards that off. Good for the anchors. Vultures getting tickled. A whole small cluster of them were sent off into the distance. and saturating the space. 102 workers, Mystery Meat pulling ahead in that respect. And if you can't punish your opponent for spending all of their larvae and workers because you don't have like an organized force over here to try to deal with this base being set up, then at some point the Zerg is just going to be able to run over you with superior numbers. Their units are individually not as cost efficient by and large, but that doesn't matter if there's like twice as many of them. And currently that is the case for the military, not the case for the workers just yet. Looks like a bunch of them were used to build structures. I thought maybe they were being killed, but obviously not. So that is why the count has gone down. And it's within touching distance in theory, but there's going to be 4 bases to the 3 of, when it comes to Neblime. He scouts out the Matraval Nest. I'm not sure if he clicked on it or not, but he also sees the Backtith. So he relatively is aware of the tech that his opponent has. I think his Wraith is going to go ahead and confirm the presence of Bactylisks. What does he want to do versus that? He has some Phalanxes, but they obviously lose their armor when they're deployed. So Bactylisks become more impactful then. Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, right? What's going to happen? Single Wraith kills a single Quasilisk and almost dies. Scouting out areas, what's happening, what's going on. He doesn't really have any control in the middle of the map, though. And his mech army is not unlikely to survive a frontal encounter versus things like Gorgs or, Iziricors or anything like that. By the way, this version of the game does have the latest changes to the balance, where the Gorgacores attack a bit slower, Nathrakors, Vassals, and Wraiths move a bit slower. So, for whatever it's worth, there's definitely going to be some adjustments made to some of these more powerful units. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen here. He's getting Tetzoricors. Those are AoE units. They deal some form of splash, like melee splash, right? There's more units on the way, though. I think this army can absolutely run roughshod over Neblimes. I think we might just end up seeing a big AoE at some point. Matrolets were making an attempt. They only last for about 10 seconds, so... An attempt is made, but here come the Chads of the Zerg army. And I think the Gorgacores are probably going to be doing the most amount of damage here, although they are being softened up by the Madrigals. Maybe if there were like 2 or 3 more Madrigals here, the air army would have been popped. And GG is called. Again, a little prematurely perhaps, but Neblime didn't really have too much. And that is going to be that. Now we do have one more game for you on this set, but I'm going to wait for another video because that game is apparently longer. So let's see if Neblime can get on the board or if Mystery Meat just stomps all over him.